The map that convinced Abraham Lincoln to immediately put an end to slave trade in America. Abraham Lincoln is credited as the American president who stood his ground, the very man who changed it all by deciding against slavery in America, not minding the popularity and the financial resources that were being profited off slavery. He was indeed a good man, an icon that stood for positive change, but perhaps he wouldn't have made his famous decision or decided to stop slavery if he hadn't been motivated. Abraham Lincoln, though always against poverty and malnutrition since he isn't from a wealthy home himself, knew that slavery wasn't so different from poverty and was perhaps even worse, but initially, he decided or opted not to interfere. According to sources, at the initial stage of his political affairs and career, as an elder statesman and one who understood diplomacy, he opted not to speak on slavery so as not to offend the population of those who vote him into power, and honestly, this seemed to have been the best move for his career. If he had spoken against slavery from the onset, he probably would have never made it to the seat of president. Though despite his decision to strategically avoid the issues of slavery, he noted through a series of reliable sources that several states in the South were threatening to secede from the Union due to suspicion about the incoming abolition of slavery. At the time, Lincoln was still president-elect, and during his inauguration, Lincoln gave a speech, one that reminded the people that he is perhaps not in power for slavery or related issues. Lincoln was famously quoted saying, "I have no purpose, directly or indirectly, to interfere with the institution of slavery in the states where it exists." However, time taught Lincoln differently. He learned and perhaps got an epiphany, a revelation greatly motivated and inspired by a map that he saw, and decided that slavery in America, both in states where it is allowed and in states where it isn't, should be banned and be forever forgotten. What is this map, and how exactly was it produced that it was able to convince a man who had initially vowed not to participate in conversations and abolition talks about slavery? According to United States historians, the map was produced by the United States Coast Survey in 1861, and it was drawn to show the census of black slaves, or generally, slaves in America, in states where slavery is allowed and in states where it isn't. Those who drew the map worked on instructions of the United States government and had collected data in 1860 before drawing a final draft in 1861. The map responsibly showed the dominance of slavery in America. It was drawn to show just how rotten the American slavery mentality had become, that a large percentage of thriving states and counties were dominantly slavery motivated. According to sources, the map was able to identify or show the counties where slavery is predominant by representing them with darker shades of color, and places with low slavery rates it represented with light shades of coloring. The map showed quite comfortably that slavery wasn't moving past its time or dying a natural death, as Lincoln and his peers had earlier thought. It showed that the southern states in America had become too confident and dependent on slavery and the cheap or close to free labor that is provided. Seeing this map, it became obvious to Lincoln that waiting for a time when slavery would end might just never happen, and that it might take more than just deciding not to speak to do the right thing. So, using the map, Lincoln began to find ways to end the nasty institution of slavery in America at the time. Though Lincoln, who had initially decided not to interfere, had never stopped showing his disdain for slavery, he hated the idea and had always thought of it as wrong and quite a disastrous idea. He was once quoted saying, "I am naturally anti-slavery." In a statement written in 1864, he expressed that if slavery is not wrong, nothing is wrong. This clearly meant that Lincoln had always stood against slavery, but it would seem he played politics and kept mute for a while until the above-stated map woke up his conscience. Even then, he was still unable to do anything until he realized that there was no way he could free slaves without engaging those who want them to be captives. Initially, he started by advocating that slaves be sent back to Africa. Then he became quite confident that perhaps gradually, slavery would end. This otherwise source of motivation, a map that was produced just like any other map, was in Lincoln's hands while he sat in meetings to determine the fate of slaves in America. Thanks for watching. Please share, like, and subscribe. Thanks.